All right, so part one, well, technically part two, but part one about the story, mom's story. She had a lot going on. She had a lot of things that she was dealing with as far as her health, but none that I really thought that would cause her to pass away when she did. So to start off, my mom had a rare disease, mitochondrial myopathy. It's an inherited disease. For what my mom told me, it's an inherited disease that's passed down 100% of the time, depending on the type that you have, but she told me that the type that she has is passed down 100% of the time to the females in the family. So basically, I have it, Araya has it, Brinley has it, their kids will have it if they're girls, etc., etc., but the severity varies. So what it is, mitochondrial myopathy is a muscle disease. It affects the mitochondria of the cells, the powerhouse of the cells, the energy. It affects the energy production in the cells. It can have an effect on lots of different parts of your body. The main ones it affected for my mom was her muscles. She had very weak muscles. She was still very much independent and did everything on her own. She didn't rely on a walker or a wheelchair or a cane, anything like that. She was actually on disability, but she also, she cooked for herself, cleaned for herself, did all of her, activities of daily living, brushing her teeth, bathing, all the things. Like, she did it all herself, and much more. She worked on her house all the time. Like, she kept it well maintained and mowed her own grass. She was always busy doing something. If she wasn't busy doing something, then she wasn't happy. So she was always doing something. So while she had that, it didn't take over her life. Her mitochondrial myopathy was diagnosed in her early 20s. She started with, how people have a lazy eye. Well, she had two lazy eyes. One was just worse than the other. She ended up having multiple surgeries on her eyes because of how droopy they were. She had them opened up. She had them opened up so far that they couldn't close all the way when she went to sleep. So she had another surgery to close them a little bit more, and then another one to open them back up a little bit more. So, she went back and forth with that. Another thing that sometimes is affected with that disease is gastrointestinal. She had gastrointestinal issues as far as like chronic diarrhea. Sorry if you're not medical, you're probably getting grossed out at this information, but it doesn't bother me. She was diagnosed with IBS, just different gastrointestinal issues, acid reflux, that kind of stuff. And then her muscle weakness. She had quite a bit of muscle weakness, and neuropathy affected her nerves. All of the things that she did in her life, like she would never complain. If she complained about any pain, or if she complained about anything, then that's when you knew she was struggling or that she was hurting. A lot of the time that we were at the hospital, that was the excuse for everything that was happening. It was always attributed to the mitochondrial myopathy, and that is not, I'm not a doctor, never claimed to be a doctor. I know my mom, and that was not the reason she was having all these issues. Yeah, they attributed to some. It attributed to some of the issues, but her mitochondrial myopathy was not the reason that she was on a ventilator. That was not the reason she ended up on a ventilator. That's not the reason she ended up going into respiratory failure, like the multiple times that she did. That's not the reason. I don't care who you are and how big your degree is. That is not the sole reason that happened. Anyway, so she had mitochondrial myopathy. It's not curable. You can just basically take meds to lessen the symptoms, but it's not curable. 2016, she broke her hip, went to the hospital. She found out it was broken. She was supposed to have a hip replacement, but because of a medication that she was on, they postponed it until a day later. They wanted her to be off of this medication before they did the surgery. She ended up having pneumonia, going into respiratory arrest, being placed on a ventilator, eventually coming off the ventilator, going into rehab to help her, regain her muscle strength, and then back home. All of that in between stuff before she had the actual surgery should never have happened. And I'll go into that later too. But she was good. A few years later, she went to Mexico with her sisters and some more family, and she ended up breaking her other hip and having to have that hip replaced as well. Fast forward to 2023, and she ended up back in the hospital for a gallbladder attack. She was supposed to have it taken out, but then the same cycle happened again. Ended up going into respiratory arrest on a ventilator. Didn't think she was going to come off of it this time. And then eventually in rehab again, and then back home. A lot of the stuff that happened in between there shouldn't have happened then either. And then that leads to the most recent and what ended up her passing away, and that is, she had hypothyroidism that we didn't know about. That it should have been caught long before the situation she was put in this time. I won't go into the full thing that happened with her this time because I'll get into that later. But the main point is she got weak and she started getting confused. She ended up at the hospital, which they transferred her from the ER to another hospital. From that hospital, she ended up in ICU to an even bigger hospital, and then to rehab. And she did avoid the ventilator this time, and she looked great, and she was supposed to come home. And then the day she was supposed to come home, she had a heart attack and she died. That shouldn't have ever happened. Yes, she had lots of health issues. She had mitochondrial myopathy, which affects your muscles. The heart is a muscle. I get that. I 100% get that. But the things that could have been done leading up to all of this were not done. And things were missed. Things were pushed aside. And I know this because I have medical records. Maybe I don't have all the medical records because they usually won't release everything. But if it's not documented, they always say this in healthcare, if it's not documented, it didn't happen. And guess what? There's a lot of stuff that's not documented or documented incorrectly. So that's just a little bit of background about her health and her health issues. The next video I'll probably talk about the actual events leading up to her going to the hospital, and then this last time, and then the story of her at the hospital, and then we'll start getting into the things that I've found. So anyway, thank you for watching again, and I hope you will help me with the project that I'm working on. Ultimately, I just want things to change. Things need to change. They've needed to change for a long time in the healthcare world. So, if you want to help, if you have a story, anything, if you know people that you think can help, that would be wanting to share information, or anybody that works in healthcare or in any position to help whatsoever, I'll link the form for you so you can fill out the form, or just message me, email me, whatever. Just get a hold of me, send them my way. Thanks again for listening, watching, and helping if you do. So have a good day.